People often describe you with the same word, calm. They say you handle things well, that you never overreact, that you're so composed, but inside, it doesn't feel calm. Your mind is busy. Your thoughts move fast. Sometimes your chest feels tight, like your brain is running calculations no one else can see. And yet somehow, no one notices. People assume you're the stable one. The question is, why does the outside version of you look peaceful while the inside feels anything but? This pattern shows up in small moments. Someone shares a problem with you. You listen carefully, you nod, you respond thoughtfully. From the outside, it looks like emotional control. But internally, your brain is already analyzing 10 different possibilities. Did I respond correctly? Are they upset with me? What's the best way to say this? Your mind moves quietly but quickly. And because you don't react loudly, people assume there isn't much happening inside. But the role slowly becomes invisible pressure. Because when you're known as the calm one, there's less room to show when you're not. Psychologists sometimes call this emotional masking. Not in a deceptive way, but in a learned, automatic way. Your brain learned that processing emotions quietly is safer than expressing them openly. And once a pattern like that forms, it becomes your default operating system. It's easy to interpret this as a flaw. You might think, maybe I'm too reserved. Maybe I don't express myself enough. But psychologically, this behavior usually starts as an adaptation. Your brain wasn't trying to hide your emotions. It was trying to manage them efficiently. In many environments, families, schools, workplaces, people who stay composed tend to avoid conflict. They stabilize situations. They think before reacting. And over time, the brain rewards this strategy. It learns something important. Quiet processing keeps things under control. So your mind becomes skilled at doing emotional work internally. You process before speaking. You regulate before reacting. From the outside, this looks like calmness. But inside, the system is working constantly. The surface looks smooth. But beneath it, currents are moving. To understand why this happens, it helps to look at how the brain handles emotions. There are two key systems involved. The amygdala, which detects emotional threats and intensity, and the prefrontal cortex, which regulates responses and decision-making. In people who appear calm under pressure, the prefrontal cortex often activates quickly. Instead of reacting outwardly, your brain shifts into analysis mode. You pause, you evaluate, you calculate the most stable response. Think of it like an internal control tower. When emotional turbulence appears, the control tower doesn't panic. It begins directing traffic. Slow down. Wait before responding. Let's understand the situation first. This creates a powerful internal loop. Emotion gives analysis, gives controlled response. The result? Your reactions look measured and calm. But that calmness is actually the product of constant internal regulation. Your brain is quietly doing the work that many people do externally, which is why others misinterpret the silence as emotional simplicity, when in reality, it's emotional processing happening behind the scenes. Understanding the mechanism changes how you work with it. Instead of forcing yourself to be more expressive, the goal is to balance internal processing with visible communication. Here are 4 principles that help. What to do? Start labeling your emotions in simple terms during conversations. I'm still thinking about this. That actually made me a little overwhelmed. Why it works in the brain. Psychologists call this affect labeling. Research shows that naming emotions reduces amygdala activity and increases prefrontal clarity. In other words, when you put feelings into words, your brain processes them more efficiently. Instead of silently absorbing tension in a meeting, you might say, I need a second to process that. Suddenly your calmness doesn't look like indifference. It looks like thoughtful regulation. What to do? Let people see small pieces of your thinking process. Why it works in the brain. Humans rely heavily on social cues to interpret emotions. If those cues are hidden, people fill the gaps with assumptions. Usually the assumption is, you're fine. Real-life example. Instead of quietly solving a problem for someone, say, I'm trying to figure out the best way to respond to that. You reveal the internal work. And people understand that calmness doesn't mean absence of emotion. What to do? Occasionally let reactions be less polished. Not dramatic, just human. Why it works in the brain. Perfection and emotional control can trigger something called impression management fatigue. The brain spends energy maintaining a composed identity. Reducing that pressure lowers cognitive load. Real-life example. If something frustrates you, saying, that actually annoyed me more than I expected, creates authenticity. You're still regulated, but no longer invisible. What to do? Recognize that internal processing is a cognitive advantage, but choose when to externalize it. Why it works in the brain. People with strong reflective processing often have higher metacognition, the ability to think about their own thinking. That's a powerful skill. It just becomes misunderstood when it stays hidden. Instead of apologizing for taking time to respond, say, I like to think things through before reacting. Now the same behavior becomes clarity instead of mystery. At the center of all this is a simple mental model. Think of yourself as someone with a quiet control room. Inside that room, many signals are constantly being monitored. Emotions, reactions, other people's moods. Your brain processes them before sending anything outward. That system isn't a flaw, it's regulation. But when the control room stays completely hidden, people assume nothing is happening. The goal isn't to shut the system down. It's to occasionally open the window. To let others see that calmness is not emptiness, it's processing. There's something important about people like you. You don't react quickly, you observe first. You absorb details others miss. And in a world full of loud reactions, that kind of quiet processing is rare. But calmness doesn't have to mean invisibility. Sometimes it just means letting people see that beneath the still surface, there is movement, there are thoughts, there are emotions, and there is a mind carefully choosing its response. So the next time someone says, you're always so calm, you might realize something. They're seeing the surface, but you know the truth. Calmness is not the absence of feeling. It's the art of holding it and deciding slowly and carefully what to do with it.